On November 2nd, 2025, the Day of the Dead, the sky over Ocampo, Michoacán, Mexico turned orange. Not from fire, from wings. Millions of monarch butterflies poured into the Monarch Butterfly Biosphere Reserve, a UNESCO World Heritage forest in the mountains above the town, landing on trees that not one of them had ever touched before. Every butterfly arriving here had just flown roughly 3,000 miles from Canada and the United States, on a route it had never flown, to a forest it had never personally seen, guided by directions nobody ever taught it. In the past 2 decades alone, this exact species has lost more than 90% of its entire population. So how does an insect with a brain smaller than a grain of rice memorize a 3,000-mile road it has never flown? And what really happened to the men who died protecting its final destination? Here's the real story underneath both of those questions. Somewhere inside that tiny brain, or somewhere close to it, this insect is carrying a working map to a mountain it has never visited, and science spent decades hunting for exactly where that map was hiding before finally cracking it open in a lab. What researchers found still surprises entomologists today, but this same forest holds a second mystery, a much darker one. 2 of the men who guarded this exact forest have turned up dead, and to this day, nobody has ever been arrested for it. By the end of this video, both mysteries get answered. The real 2009 discovery hiding inside a butterfly's own antennae, not the old guesswork about magnetic fields or scent trails. Along the way, there's also the story of the 25-year-old woman who physically discovered this entire forest back in 1975 and had her name erased from her own discovery for 36 years afterward. For the Perpetua people native to these mountains, none of this was ever really a mystery to begin with. They call the butterfly parcata the harvester, and for centuries they've believed every wing that lands here is carrying something home, a soul, an ancestor, arriving right on schedule every single year for the Day of the Dead. Science took a lot longer to catch up. It still hasn't caught up to all of it. Before getting to the part where people start dying for these insects, the scale of what's actually being lost needs to be understood first. Scientists measure monarch colonies by how much forest floor and treetop their bodies physically cover. In the winter of 1996 to 97, colonies blanketed 18.19 hectares of forest, enough, by some accounts, to be visible from a low-flying plane. By the winter of 2013 to 2014, that number had collapsed to 0.67 hectares. Over roughly 2 decades, the eastern monarch population fell more than 90%. The forest is being eaten from 2 directions at once. Illegal logging strips away the fir trees the colonies need to survive freezing nights, and since the 1990s, Michoacán's avocado orchards have nearly tripled in size, now covering close to 400,000 acres of the state, with roughly 2,400 acres carved directly out of the reserve itself. Researchers studying the region have found that not one single legal permit for that clearing has ever been issued. Every acre of it is illegal. Even the science behind the disappearance has a name attached to it. WWF Mexico researcher Eduardo Rendon Salinas published findings in 2021 tracing the decline to 2 separate culprits. From 1994 to 2003, farmers across the American Midwest sprayed corn and soy fields with the herbicide glyphosate, wiping out 81% of the milkweed plants monarch caterpillars depend on to survive. After 2004, a second culprit took over, shifting climate patterns across the butterfly's summer breeding grounds. Someone is profiting from every tree that disappears. In 2020, that fact turned lethal. But to understand who was standing guard over this forest and why it eventually cost men their lives, the story has to rewind 50 years to an obsession that consumed one man's entire career. Since 1937, a Canadian zoologist named Fred Urquhart had been gluing tiny paper tags onto monarch wings, trying to trace where the butterflies vanished to every winter. Volunteers across North America helped him tag thousands of them. Every autumn, the trail went cold somewhere in Texas. Nearly 4 decades of searching produced nothing but frustration. Late in 1972, Urquhart's wife Nora placed a request in Mexican newspapers asking anyone near the butterfly's path for help. A letter came back, dated February 26, 1973, from a man in Mexico City named Kenneth Brugger, a self-taught textile engineer. Brugger spent 2 years crisscrossing the Mexican countryside in a Winnebago with his dog Cola, chasing rumors of forests full of orange wings. Along the way, he recruited a young Michoacan-born woman named Catalina Aguado to help him search. They married in 1974. On January 2nd, 1975, the 2 of them hiked to a summit called Cerro Pelm and found around it. Millions of monarchs coating the trees and the forest floor itself in numbers neither of them had ever imagined. Aguado was 25 years old. At the summit, the celebration didn't last long. So we found them, Aguado said. Now what? We call Fred, Brugger answered. And then what? She pushed back. Word gets out. This mountain fills with people, they'll ruin it. His answer became their rule for the next year. Nobody outside the Urquharts would hear about Cerro Peln. Not yet. She was right to be afraid of what fame would eventually bring. It just took 45 more years. When National Geographic ran the discovery as its August 1976 cover story, later called The Entomological Discovery of the 20th Century, Aguado's photograph filled the cover. The article mentioned her exactly once, unnamed, as a bright and delightful Mexican. She stayed silent about being erased from her own discovery for 36 years. Finding the forest explained where the butterflies went. It didn't explain how they got there. That question sat unsolved for another 3 decades, until 2009, inside a lab at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Researchers Christine Merlin, Robert Gagier, and Dr. Stephen Reppert had assumed, like everyone before them, that a butterfly's internal clock lived in its brain. To test that assumption, they painted some monarchs' antennae completely black. Others they removed outright. Then they strapped the insects into flight simulators and watched what happened. The butterflies with blacked out or missing antennae lost their sense of direction entirely, even with the clock in their brain still ticking normally. The real timekeeper wasn't in the brain at all. It was living inside the antennae the entire time. Here's the actual mechanism. Monarchs steer using the position of the sun, the way a compass steers by magnetic north. But the sun moves across the sky all day, so a fixed sun compass alone would eventually send them in circles. The antennae solve that problem. They house a second internal clock that constantly recalculates where the sun should be, hour by hour, correcting the flight path in real time. The finding was published in the journal Science on September 25th, 2009, handing an organ nobody suspected an entirely new job. Later research even found a backup system, a magnetic sense that seems to kick in only when clouds block the sun, in case the primary compass ever goes dark. One more detail makes the whole mechanism stranger still. The specific generation of monarchs that completes this migration is not an ordinary generation. Regular monarchs live 4 to 5 weeks. This one, researchers call it the super generation, lives 8 to 9 months, just long enough to fly 3,000 miles, survive an entire winter, and begin the journey home again. Every part of that journey has now been explained by science. What happened to the men guarding its final destination has not. Before that part of the story, if hidden histories like this are the kind of thing that pulls you in, the subscribe button is right there, and it genuinely helps stories like this reach more people. Now back to the mountain. Homero Gómez González used to be part of the problem. Born in the town of El Rosario in the late 1960s, he spent years working as a logger, cutting the very fir trees monarch colonies depend on to survive. When the Mexican government first proposed protecting this forest, Mez fought against it. Then something changed. He became the reserve's loudest defender instead, eventually rising to manage the El Rosario Sanctuary itself, the largest in the state, and serving as commissioner of the town. Under his leadership, volunteers planted close to 1 million oyamel trees by hand. On January 12th, 2020, Gómez posted a video of butterflies swirling around him at the sanctuary. He called them, in his own words, the lovers of the sun, the soul of the dead. The next day, he vanished. Family members later said he had been receiving threats and ransom calls tied to organized crime. Search parties combed the mountains for 2 weeks. State prosecutors ended up questioning 53 police officers from the 2 nearest towns. On January 29th, 2020, his body surfaced in a holding pond near the sanctuary he had spent a decade defending. He had drowned. He also had a head wound that investigators never fully explained. Just days later, a second man was found dead. Raul Hernández Romero, a tour guide at the nearby El Campanario Sanctuary, was discovered with signs of violence on his body. 2 guardians of the same forest, gone within the same week. The reserve had carried UNESCO World Heritage status since 2008. UNESCO's own director called the deaths deeply concerning. Gómez's widow, Rebecca Valencia, told reporters plainly, it wasn't an accident, it was murder. Investigators eventually closed the case, officially ruling Gómez's death accidental. To this day, nobody has ever been arrested for either killing. Gómez was one of 30 environmental defenders murdered across Mexico that year alone, according to the watchdog group Global Witness. The men guarding these trees stood directly between organized crime and enormous money. Investigators have since documented cartels expanding into the avocado business itself, laundering drug profits profits through orchards planted on illegally cleared land near the reserve. As recently as October 2025, federal inspectors shut down 5 hectares of freshly planted, completely unpermitted avocado trees growing on protected land at the reserve's edge. The forest that took nearly 40 years to find was, decades later, still being stolen, 1 illegal hectare at a time. And yet, the forest did not fall silent. In the years after Gómez's death, the communities surrounding El Rosario did something no government agency had managed on its own. They organized 58 ejidos, 13 indigenous Mazahua and Otomi communities, and 21 small landholders joined into what locals now call a Polygon of protection, a shared ring of forest patrol stretching across the entire reserve. Today, 260 community guards walk these mountains in rotating shifts, day and night. Nobody enters the sanctuary without them knowing. One of them, a man named Olegario Sanchez, put it simply while walking the same trails Gómez once patrolled. His legacy, Sanchez said, is in all of us. The results are finally starting to show. In March 2026, World Wildlife Fund Mexico released its newest survey. During the 2025 to 2026 winter, monarch colonies occupied 2.93 hectares of forest, a 64% jump from the year before, and the sharpest single-year recovery in recent memory. It still isn't enough. Scientists say the population needs at least 6 hectares of occupied forest to be considered stable. Even after this recovery, the monarchs remain under half of that safety line and a fraction of the 18-hectare forests their ancestors filled nearly 30 years ago. Every November 2nd, without fail, they still come home anyway, guided by a clock hidden inside their own antennae, landing on a mountain discovered by an untrained mechanic and a 25-year-old woman the world once refused to name, watched over now by 260 villagers who decided a butterfly's homecoming was worth more than the men trying to burn the forest down for it. Call it biology, call it ancestors, returning home the way the Papacia always said they would. Either way, something impossible is still finding its way back to this exact mountain every single year, and somebody is still willing to die just to keep a place for it to land. If this pulled you in, there's a lot more waiting here. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and send this to someone who needs a reminder that a few real miracles are still out there, fighting to survive.